Another Democratic primary poll puts Senator Elizabeth Warren 4 points ahead of the field. Does this mean former Vice President Biden is finally moving out of the frontrunner spot?
Team Rising is here. Colin Ruggiero is a Democratic strategist, and Inez Stepman is a senior policy analyst at the Independent Women's Forum.
That's right. Thank you guys so much for joining us. We've got this interesting new poll.
Thanks for having us.
I mean, we've got Elizabeth Warren at 26% atop the field, Joe Biden at that 22 number, and Bernie Sanders at 14. I mean, Colin, you've come on here many times. You've seen this poll. What do you make of Warren? I mean, this is a 2.6% margin, so she really is at the top.
She's there
in this race.
Yeah, and I think when we were on last time, I said the momentum is clearly with her.
Yeah.
And, you know, the thing about winning is it begets more winning, just like momentum builds upon itself. And that's what we're seeing now. She's got the momentum, and she's being very authentic. Her message isn't changing or wavering, and she's running a great campaign.
Yeah. I mean, Inez, one of the things that I've kind of highlighted is that the drop of Kamala Harris at that 5% number is really what has been a boon to Elizabeth Warren's candidacy. I see all these headlines. Warren is the only one to expand her base. I really think she's just gobbling up Kamala's white liberal support. What do you think? Yeah.
Well, I think that might change as she kind of gains this front-runner status. I think a lot of people, especially with Joe Biden being in the news the way that he is, and of course with Bernie's health problems, I mean, she seems to be poised to be a front-runner. And then I think a lot of those numbers will change once people recognize her as somebody who could win. I think there are a lot of Democratic voters who are looking just for a winner, and she might be able to add a lot of those folks to what is her base, which is white progressive liberals, Massachusetts.
Yeah.
I think that looking just for a winner, I think, is pretty key here. And I'm curious how you think that plays into what you mentioned with Bernie Sanders' health problems that emerged yesterday or the night before yesterday. Really, a lot of people have talked about how it's a routine procedure. On the other hand, he's 78 years old, and a blocked artery is symptomatic of some heart disease, and it reminds people that he's 78 years old. What does Bernie Sanders need to do to kind of come back from this to show that he's still in this race?
Great question for both of you.
I'm not sure that there is much he can do, and I wish him the best in terms of his health. I couldn't disagree with him more. Being from an Eastern European, or my family's from Eastern European communist country, couldn't disagree with him
Democratic socialist
more. But I mean, he supported Venezuelan. Anyway, the point is, wish him the best for his health. But I mean, I think it's hard for him to come back against this, because especially as the progressive wing of the party is looking at, supporting him versus Warren. I mean, this is just one more thing that says, okay, well, he came up with a lot of these ideas. Elizabeth Warren took his platform, but, she has the energy to run. She has the momentum, as you said. I think that it's really tough for him to come back after this.
What do you think, Colin?
Yeah, I disagree. I think, it depends on the severity of the stint and the procedure and where he is right now. But I would look, he has been nothing but if authentic for the times that he has run for office. He is very clearly for what he's for and hasn't wavered.
Right.
I would open that authenticity to my recovery process. If I'm him and I can handle it, I start talking to my people from the hospital bed and from the recovery room, and I just get back out there as quickly as I can, safely, and I wish him the best, but bring people through in the process. And I think when you open those windows and you say, here's the real process, people are really looking for that in all kind of leaders in politics today.
Crystal talked about this earlier, where she was saying that, look, what Bernie, the best thing he could possibly do is come back from this, go on that debate stage, and just punch above his weight. Because this is something that we've seen from him consistently, is he wants to make nice with Elizabeth Warren. He wants to be nice to Joe Biden and just be like, I'm the fighter who's been fighting for this for 40 years. But you got to start contrasting with people, because at this point we're seeing that 14%, around 14 to 20 is either number one, number two, or number three. He has not been able to rise, and to peel some of those voters who might be leaving from Pete Buttigieg and Kamala Harris, that's going to require him to draw a stark contrast.
He's got a great opportunity right now. Look, America loves the underdog story.
True.
We are the underdog story. Now, if he can look at that and capitalize on that, because he hasn't had that. He was the underdog against Hillary, and that was part of the power of his movement. And then he's kind of been, okay, we already know him, so he hasn't been as exciting. Now he's got a chance to reinsert himself as that underdog based on this health scenario.
What do you think, Inez?
I honestly think his best move going forward would be to play Kingmaker and to secure some spot in a future Democratic administration. I know that he's deeply interested in education. Again, I work in ed. I would not like to see Secretary of Education Bernie Sanders, but it's something he's deeply interested in the Senate. I actually think he could also also be that kind of kingmaker who really, he definitely has the authentic socialist brand to give in the Democratic primary. I don't see him recovering because Elizabeth Warren has taken so many of his platform positions, but she does have so many advantages that he doesn't have, not just with his health and age, but also the fact that she's slightly more intersectional, perhaps less intersectional than she claimed to be in the past.
Sure.
I just think that she has a lot of advantages with a lot of the same platform positions that Bernie Sanders has.
But I know people want him to draw contrast with Elizabeth Warren a lot more, and Crystal was talking about that earlier. I don't think that he's going to do that. I think he has a lot more respect for Elizabeth Warren than perhaps some of his supporters do, actually. I know that people have been pushing him to hit Biden as well. He thinks of Biden as a friend, but I do think he has to get beyond that. Like Joe Biden is not your friend. And so if he can hit Joe Biden on the debate stage in a way that kind of puts him out, is there a possibility that he could make it a two-way race with Warren, or does somebody like Harris or Buttigieg kind of sneak back in and make it a left-first establishment?
Quick thoughts from both of you.
Yeah, I think there's no way that Pete or Kamala get back in. I think he does have the opportunity to make it a one-to-one race if he hits somebody, but in a way that makes people still continue to believe and have some optimistic hope, right? The thing about these debates, when people have hit each other, it's been a momentary bump and they've crashed right after that because they're not following it up with anything. They're not keeping people hopeful and engaged. That's what you've seen in Kamala's race here. Like, Kamala had that nice hit against Joe, and then she wasn't able to follow it up. Like, she hasn't been able to follow up most of the things in her campaign. Great launch, downhill from there. Bump in the debate, downhill from there.
Right. What do you think, Inez?
I think this brings up a really interesting point, which is that a lot of the other candidates who still kind of had a shot here and were vying for it, and so even folks like Andrew Yang, if this becomes a two-person race or even a one-person race, their window of opportunity to make a splash and actually get themselves into that top tier, when that top tier was 3, 4, 5 candidates, there was still a lot more movement. If it becomes a one- or two-person race, I think that window of opportunity for a lot of these candidates is closing, so they're kind of on their last chance.
I think you're right. I also do think Ryan is correct, because the polling data that Crystal and I have looked at a lot is that the second choice voters for Biden is Bernie Sanders. And so if he could at least draw some contrast, peel some of that approach off, he might have a shot here. You guys stick around. We're going to take a quick break. We'll have more Rising right after this.